조명을 좀 밝혀주셔서 좋을 것 같고요. 알렌 포버가 인도하는 마스터 클래스를 진행하려고 합니다. 여러분 준비되셨나요? 네. 자, 제가 통역을 완벽하게 할 수 있지만 밤새 그것 때문에 너무 고민이 돼서요. 오늘 특별히 기타 수고하신 김성환 씨께서 트랜스레이션 해주시겠습니다. 큰 박수로 맞아주십시오.
Thank you, son. Is this thing, can you, 40 minutes? Okay, 40 minutes. I got a timer up there. So, where to begin here? It's fun for us to be here, especially having an opportunity like this to kind of play a short concert for you. Normally during a concert, you hear a band playing music, and you don't really get to interact with the people who are playing. So here's our chance to interact a little bit. I don't know, you know, I'll let song kind of translate as I go, but basically, first of all, I want to just say I'm really, really happy and excited to be here in Seoul with all of you, and I'll add that you're extraordinarily lucky to have Youngju Song Youngju as your professor here. She's an incredible musician, so yes, give it up. And I had the opportunity to meet her kind of by way of a connection through NYU, which is where I teach. I teach composition and arranging and trombone and improv, all sorts of stuff. And so I met Youngju indirectly through NYU, and actually I met Sung through NYU as well. Made a lot of new Korean friends through NYU. So we can thank NYU for all this in a way. I wanted to, because I could talk and I don't really want to do that necessarily. I want to open it up just to, right away, you just heard us play. Do any of you, about anything, have any questions right off the bat? And this is not just for me, you're listening to some of the greatest, and I mean these are some of the greatest players in the world. My friends Will Vinson and Alex Sipiagin are honestly two of the greatest horn players you're going to hear anywhere. For sure, direct questions to them as well. They'll be happy to jump up here and answer them, I think. Anyway, any questions right off the bat about anything?
여러분 다 알아들으시죠? 네, 그냥 짧게 말씀해 드릴게요. 여기 뭐 서울 와서 이런 기회가 있어서 되게 감사하고 보통은 공연을 하고 이제 끝이잖아요. 근데 이제 이렇게 공연을 하고선 이제 여러분하고 이제 인터랙트 한국말로 뭐지? 맞죠, 소통을 할 수 있게 돼서 너무 좋은 기회인 것 같고 진짜 여러분은 되게 럭키한 사람들이라고 이렇게 송영 씨 같은 정말 훌륭한 선생님한테 배울 수 있어가지고 그리고 이제 알란이 송영주 교수님이죠, 여러분한테는 교수님 앨범을 어레인지를 했었는데 그 10집 앨범이나요 이게? 네, 그거를 다 어레인지를 했는데 이제 NIU에서 기회가 생겨가지고 만나게 돼가지고 이제 그렇게 돼가지고 이제 연결이 돼서 된 건데 이제 같이 오신 윌빈슨, 알렉스 모두들 진짜 세계 최고의 뮤지션 중에 하나예요. 여러분들 뭐 좀만 앨범 찾아 들으시면은 어디서든지 보실 수 있을 거예요. 그래서 이제 뭐 질문이 있으시거나 그냥 아무거나 뭐 음악에 관련된 거 그래서 이상한 질문 마시고요. 음악 관련된 질문 알란이나 아니면 뭐 다른 멤버들한테도 있으시면은 질문해 주시면은 뭐 질문 받고 그렇게 진행하도록 하겠습니다. 뭐 질문 있으신 분 있으신가요? 뭐 작곡, 어레인지, 뭐 연주 아무거나 뭐 아니면 아까 들었던 거 중에 정말 부렸다는 거 뭐 코멘트 하시면 뭐 그런 거.
여러분 질문 좀 해볼까요? 아무거나 지금 들으신 음악에 관해서 궁금한 거 있으면 물어보시면 연주자들이 연주하는 걸 보고 궁금했던 거 있으면 질문하셔도 좋습니다.
No questions yet. Okay, I will say one very important quality about being an artist and about being a jazz musician is being curious. and really wanting to know and exploring ideas. So if you have questions, this is a prime opportunity for all of us. It's really important to be curious about this. If you're not curious, if you don't have any questions right now, it either means maybe you're just afraid to ask them, which is totally understandable, I totally get that. Or you don't know what to ask, in which case you should be going and listening to this music a lot. I promise if you listen to this music a lot, and all of your teachers will have probably a list of 10 important jazz records for you to listen to, you will have questions. Yes.
훌륭한 뮤지션이나 아티스트가 되기 위해서는 호기심이 가장 중요한 것 중에 하나가 호기심이거든요. 그래서 여러분 호기심이나 질문을 가지시고 질문해 주시면 알란이 그러네요. 그러니까 창피해지지 마시고 저기 질문 하나 있네요. So what is the attraction? What's the attraction you in music? 제가 13년 만에 한국에 왔는데요. 지금 한국 온 지 한 3주 됐어요. 그래가지고 지금 되게 언어가 이상해요.
Okay, so the question, what attracts me about music, I think, or inspires me to music? This might be a good opportunity for me to talk about, to start by talking about my childhood. I am an identical twin. I have an identical twin brother who's a drummer. And one of the things that attracted me to this music was the having a twin brother and the ability to play with him all the time. I mean, we started out by just playing the toys, obviously, but when we found musical instruments, it was just a fun thing for us to do together. And as we grew, we got more and more deeply involved in playing together. And the nice thing is that we still play together all the time. So I think the thing for me that attracted me to the music was kind of the community element of it. In other words, it brings people together in a way that helps you to communicate with each other in ways that go beyond words. You can communicate in sound, and it's very fun to do that with my brother and with all these folks.
저 어렸을 때 그러니까 알란이 쌍둥이에요. 일란성 쌍둥이여서 그러니까 형이 있어요. 쌍둥이 형이 있는데 드러머예요. 마크 포버라고 해서 여러분 유튜브에 검색하시면 진짜 훌륭한 드러머 중에 하나인데 어렸을 때부터 항상 연주를 같이 해서 이제 항상 이제 그 음악을 같이 하면서 커뮤니티 그러니까 뭐라고 해야 되지? 커뮤니티 공동체 그러니까 이제 음악에서 매력을 가장 느낀 게 그렇게 이제 음악을 하면서 서로 소통을 하고 이제 커뮤니티가 이제 생기면서 여러분도 이제 제가 조금 더 하면은 여러분도 같이 음악한 친구들이 있으면서 같이 계속 연주를 하면서 새로운 친구를 사귀고 점점 그렇게 공동체가 생기잖아요. 그래서 그거에서 되게 매력을 많이 느끼면서 이제 그렇게 하면서 서로 도움을 주고 그러면서 이제 프렌드십하고 뮤지션십이 이제 빌드업 됐다고 합니다. 네. 저 알아서 하세요. 여러분 잘하잖아요. 네, 그렇죠. 예.
So that should attract you to, that it should inspire you to the music from the very beginning. Now, once you're kind of involved with the music a little bit and you start to listen to it and get to know it a little bit better, then you can interact on a little bit more of an involved level. So, in this case, you know, this is a band that doesn't really play together a lot. I mean, this configuration has only really played once together. So, how do we do it? How on earth are we able to do this? I think it would be a good opportunity to maybe project a couple of these scores, if we can do that. We just played 3 different tunes for you guys, okay? The first one, and they were all written by Youngju, and you know, she sent me all the music, and I kind of interacted with it as an arranger by, you know, I think of composition as a slowed down form of improvisation, and I think of improvisation as a slowed down form of composition.
여러분 음악 들으시면서 되게 어려우셨죠? 아니요? 수준 되게 높네. 쉽지는 않잖아요. 되게 파트도 많고. 그런데 저희는 이렇게 한 게 2번째예요. 공연을 한 게 예전에 6월 달에 한 번 했었고 DC 재즈 페스티벌에서 한 번 했었고 지금 2번째인데 어떻게 이렇게 리허설 아까 1시간 맞춰봤거든요. 이렇게 1시간 맞춰보고 어떻게 이렇게 할 수 있을까 말씀하시는데 이제 악보를 이제 프로젝터로 보여주면서 이제 설명을 해주신다고 그러거든요. 그래서 뭐 악보 아까 주신 거 있나요? 한번 일단 해주실래요?
Do I do it with this?
이거 리모컨으로 하는 건가요?
Okay, maybe we can pull up the piece called Turning Point. It's the first tune we played.
터닝 포인트라는 곡 거기 있거든요.
I have no idea how to work this thing.
Do you like a Steve Jobs Steve?
Is it like Okay. All right. This is the first piece we played, okay? Now bear in mind, we haven't played together much. So I just want to talk about, does this thing point? What does this thing do? I don't even know what am I holding right here? Is this, you know what this is? Whatever. Oh wait, it's not on. Maybe I should turn it on. Let's see what this does. Oh! Look at that. Damn. Okay, does this do anything? No. Okay. I wanted to kind of point around. Anyway, this is kind of a classic example of the way almost every jazz musician starts learning how to play jazz. They start learning by playing what are called head charts.
재즈 뮤지션한테는 거의 스탠다드, 그러니까 뭐 업계 공용 악보예요. 네. 그래서 이제 재즈를 어떻게 시작하냐면은 이런 악보를 이제 읽으면서 배우게 되거든요. 그게 이제 first step인데. 예.
So in this piece, this is kind of this was a fun arrangement to work on for me because Youngju, she sent me all these tunes of her trio playing these pieces, and she said, "Okay, arrange them for horns." Okay, now what? Now what do I do? The first thing I'm doing is I'm listening. Always listening first. You're listening to the music. You're listening to the band. You're listening to the songs, and you're trying to interact with the songs in a sort of an improvisational way. So I'm listening to the song in the first way, and I'm interacting with it in just the same way as I'm interacting with a band the first time I play with a band. there's certain things that I'm thinking about. So when I received this tune from Youngju, my immediate reaction was, oh, this is sort of a classic. You play the melody and then you play some solos. So this first page, what's going on this first page? Somebody tell me.
여러분 이 곡 다 아시죠? 여러분 교수님 곡인데요. 앨범 다 가지고 계시죠? 네. 그래서 처음에 이제 송영주 교수님께서 이제 편곡을 의뢰하셨는데 알란한테 원래 이제 트리오 세팅이나 뭐 퀄텟 세팅으로 돼 있던 곡들을 이제 알란한테 보내가지고 이제 어레인지를 해달라고 부탁을 하셨어요. 예. 그래서 이제 알란은 제일 처음 한 게 계속 들었대요. 계속 그래서 계속 들었다고 하는데 이제 그 다음에는 어떻게 할지 들어보겠습니다.
So can anybody tell me? You know her music a little bit, but what's going on this first page? Can anybody tell me? I'll get back to this. Point it that way.
첫 번째 페이지 보시고선 What's going on? Anyone knows?
What do you think? Take a wild guess. What do you see?
뭐라고요? 크게 말해요. 교수님 말고요.
Okay, who's playing? Who's playing? Piano? Who else? Bass and drums. It's her trio. Is there a melody?
멜로디 있나요? 앞에?
No melody? You sure about that? There's always a melody.
멜로디는 항상 있습니다.
In music, and this is my perspective, I'm a trombone player. I play an instrument that plays one note at a time. I'm always listening for the melody. There is absolutely a melody here. It's not the theme, the primary theme. I mean, every song has a song when the vocalists come in, and I think Youngju's music is very lyrical. I can hear vocalists on it a lot, even though this is instrumental. So, but there is a melody, and the melody, to me, is in the, well, it's in a lot of places, but it's primarily in the bass part. That's the first melody you hear.
여러분, 멜로디는 어디나 항상 있는 건데 노트를 하나 부르더라도 두 개 부르더라도 항상 멜로디 있는데 특히 송영주 교수님의 음악에는 멜로디가 항상 있어요. 굉장히 그러니까 그냥 듣더라도 가사가 없더라도 들으면 항상 보컬리스트가 있는 것 같은 이제 음악인데 알란은 이제 거기서 이제 캐치를 해가지고 항상 멜로디를 이제 그리려고 했는데 지금 보면은 베이스 파트에 보면은 리프 같이 있죠. 그걸 이제 멜로디라고 생각하고 이제 어레인지를 하셨는데요.
So this first thing that you hear, it helps to set up the vocalist, quote unquote, and by vocalist I mean the primary melody. So first thing you hear is an intro. That's what's going on here. It just doesn't jump right into the song. There's an intro, kind of help it build a little drama. Then we have the melody. Somewhere. There we go.
You should point somewhere.
That way. Yeah. Okay, now what's going on? Who's again, this was a trio tune, and I have all these. You see that I have all these horns available, right? I have 5 horns available. How am I orchestrating this part?
지금 보면은 이제 멜로디가 시작되고 있죠. 근데 혼이 지금 몇 개 있죠? 여기 앞에 몇 개죠? 네, 그렇죠. 5개죠. 그래서 5개가 혼이 있는데 이제 멜로디를 오케스트레이션이라고 그러죠. 좀 편곡할 때 어떻게 배치를 할까 이제 말씀해 주십니다.
One thing I think about when I start to orchestrate somebody's music is math. In other words, it's a very numbers-based idea, which is if I have three elements on the melody, can you count three people that are playing the melody? Alto, trumpet, and the piano, if she chooses to play it. There are three things that are balancing that.
예, 지금 멜로디를 세 악기가 치고 있죠. 그래서 오케스트레이션 할 때 알란이 접근하는 방법은 숫자래요. 수학인데 숫자 노름이라고 그러는데 예, 그 지금은 3이라는 숫자를 기억하고 계시면 될 것 같아요.
So basically what we're looking at is a duet. And this is, Youngju wrote this, I just orchestrated it, but there's a duet happening. And I think that's why I really like this tune, is that there are multiple melodies happening at once. And this is as a form, this is like the first A section. Then when I get to the second A section, the melody happens again, but I want to do something a little bit different this time, so I'm obviously adding a little something. Sorry, this is weird. Oh wait, look, I saw a mouse. Yeah. I don't know. I can't seem to get it. But I end up putting a second element on the second A, which is the tenor sax and the trombone, to kind of add another melodic or add another sort of color to the composition at this point. So all this to say, when I'm orchestrating, I'm thinking about kind of the story element to the piece.
예, 지금 보면은 이제 아까 A 섹션에서 B 섹션으로 넘어가면서 보면은 악기가 추가된 게 보이시죠? 이제 스윙이라고 적혀 있는 이제 그게 이제 다른 파트인데 보면은 알토, 테너, 이제 트럼펫하고 트롬본까지 더해졌죠. 예, 그래서 이제 섹션이 바뀌면서 컬러를 더 더하기 위해서 다른 악기를 이제 더한 거거든요. 보면은 예.
So we can go through this. I don't want to go through this whole thing and talk about all the details. But getting back to the melody, I want to ask you guys if we just go back to her melody here. What is a melody? What makes something melodic? I'd like somebody to answer this question because I'd like to have some people come up and play a standard Autumn Leaves with us in a little bit. But before I do that, I want to ask you guys, what does it mean if I ask you to come up here and play something melodic, or ask you what a melody is? I'd love to hear some answers. So what makes something melodic?
멜로디는 왜 멜로디일까요? 어떻게 만들어지는 걸까요? 하고 이제 물어보셨는데 질문하셨어요. 대답을 해보세요.
Do any of you sing?
싱어 계신가요?
Singers?
싱어들?
What?
보컬들?
You're singing melodies all the time. How do you make it melodic? I mean, what are you thinking about? Or
말하듯이 Yes, you understand.
to sound sort of natural, like you're just speaking to somebody? Yeah. Yeah, okay, that's a good answer, but I want more specifics. Like, that's good, but how do you do that?
그걸 어떻게 할까요? 그렇게 자연스럽고
How do you make something sound natural?
자연스럽게 어떻게 사운드를 만들까요? 말하듯이 멜로디를 그렇게 어떻게 만들까요?
So what is a melody? That's the question. Yes, yes. Storytelling. I like that answer. Okay, that's a good answer. So what happens in a story? So let's say you're reading a novel. What is it about a great story that makes it a great story?
소설을 보면은 좋은 이야기가 있잖아요. 기승전결.
What was that?
기승전결은 영어로 나도 모르겠는데.
Dynamics? Oh, prelude. Intro. Okay, a form. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. All that is true. When I think of a story, so I had to read a book called The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn
헐베리 핀이라는 책을 읽었습니다.
when I was in high school. So in that story, there are a lot of there are a few characters that come up throughout the story, and the characters themselves represent certain things. One of them represents superstition. When a certain character pops into the story, he's always like, thinking about something really superstitious. One of them represents racism, which is like a big, heavy element of that story. Those are topics. There can sometimes be very big topics that appear sort of with a character. So when a certain character returns throughout a story, what does the character represent? It's like superstition or racism. Those are motifs in the story.
허클베리 핀이라는 책을 보면은 캐릭터들이 있는데 그 캐릭터가 나올 때마다 어떤 주제를 던져주는데 그 주제가 어떤 캐릭터가 나왔을 때는 인종차별, 어떤 캐릭터가 나왔을 때는 미신이라는 캐릭터를 가지고 있는 사람이 있었는데 그런 캐릭터마다 모티프를 가지고 있어요. 띠임이라고 그러죠. 모티프. 그래서
You also hear this in music, motivic development. That's a hugely important element of what makes something melodic and what makes something memorable and what makes a composition or an improvisation successful. That's what I mean by when I think of a composition, I think of it as a slowed down version of improvisation in a way, but when I think of improvisation, I think of that as a sped up version of composition. I'm always thinking about motivic development. I mean, hopefully not thinking about it so much anymore, but when I think there's an importance in learning a lot of melodies as you work on playing any kind of music, particularly jazz, but any kind of music, learning a lot of melodies so you have this sense of what is melodic. So motivic development, it becomes a natural part of you as a musician.
이제 음악에서 이제 알란이 이제 컴포지션이나 뭐 임프로바이제이션 할 때 가장 중요하게 생각하는 게 모티브 디벨롭먼트라는 건데 이제 모티브를 이제 디벨롭하는 거죠. 뭔지 알죠? 내가 굳이 설명 안 해도 되지. 네. 그래서 그거를 가장 중요하게 생각하는 건데 그래가지고 이제 여러분들 재즈 스탠다드라는 거 배우죠 학교에서. 어떤 네이버스 올드 띵즈요 배우죠 다. 그래서 선생님들이 그거 멜로디 외우라고 시키죠. 억지로. 그게 이제 다 피가 되고 살이 되는 거예요. 말하는 게 이제 거기 왜냐면은 그 멜로디에 모티브 디벨롭먼트가 있기 때문에 그 멜로디에서 왜냐면은 뭐 어텀 리브스 같은 따르따삐 뭐르삐 다 모티브 디벨롭먼트잖아요. 그리고 얼더 띵스 뜨삐 다 모티브 디벨롭먼트. 그래서 그거를 이제 굉장히 중요하고 이제 여러분들이 그 하기 싫은 헤드를 배워야 되는 게 거기 이제 그 이유를 이제 더 말씀해 주십니다.
So when you play a tune, like I think someone was just saying, referencing Autumn Leaves, which let's get a few people up here to play this tune. But in Autumn Leaves, this melody, where is the motif, the first motif? I'll play the melody.
여러분 이제 좀 학생들 올라와가지고 어떤 리브스 같이 연주하면서 이제 코멘트 해주실 건데 첫 번째 멜로디가 어떻게 되죠? 어떤 리브스에서?
Okay, why is that melodic? Where's the motif? Do 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 dee, right. And then what happens next? Yeah, so what is that called?
그걸 뭐라고 부르죠?
Motivic development. So when you improvise, the first thing you can do before you get into like learning all these different chords and scales is to just work on a melody and embellishing the melody and embellishing the motif. So I'm going to take that melody, that general motif, and I'm just going to embellish it a little bit. Start to play around with it.
여러분이 이제 스케일이나 뭐 코드 배우고 뭐 그런 거 하기 전에 이제 멜로디를 가지고 모티브를 가지고 이제 발전시키는 연습을 하는 게 좋다고 말씀하십니다.
The first version I'm going to do is I'm not going to change any of the notes. I'm only going to vary the rhythm of it.
노트는 안 바꾸고 리듬만 바꾼다고 합니다. 첫 번째는.
So I didn't change anything about the notes. All I did was change the rhythm. So that's a place to start for you. Now you can start to embellish each motif a little bit melodically by changing the notes a little bit. But always playing around the motif.
예, 첫 번째는 이제 리듬만 바꾸고 노트를 바꾸지 않았는데요. 여러분 처음에 연습하실 땐 그렇게 연습하시고 이제 두 번째는 노트를 조금씩 바꿀 텐데 항상 멜로디를 잊지 말고 멜로디 주변에서 연주하는 연습을 하라고 말씀하셨습니다.
You can keep on embellishing this, just even really, I'm thinking more about embellishing a melody than I am about a bunch of arpeggios and chords at this point. Obviously, I've worked on all that stuff, but the first thing you should try to do, and let's get some people up here. I don't know, maybe
학생들
Somebody.
올라오세요. 연주하실 분.
And I'd love to get Will and Alex up here too, because they can provide very good examples. We're going to play Autumn Leaves. And I would love to hear some of you guys
다들
play.
올라와요.
So the one thing I want to do with this kind of exercise is to, for everybody, for everybody to just basically think motivically, think melodically, including the drummer. The drummer's not immune to motivic development. Okay. I certainly do. I've been talking for a while. I mean, let me just say one thing before I hand it to Will, because Will's going to have probably more insightful things to say. But first of all, great playing, all you guys. Really fun. Feels good right away. Now I'm going to get a little nitpicky. One thing that I noticed. What's your name? Hoji? Hochin, okay. Alan, nice to meet you. So I noticed particularly when you were comping, you could have been listening more to what was happening in the moment. It seemed like, you know when you put your car on autopilot and it just drives itself?
컴핑할 때 좀 더 다른 사람을 많이 들었으면 좋겠다고 하시는데, 이제 보통 비행기나 자동차에 오토파일럿 버튼이 있잖아요. 비행기 오토파일럿 모드 누르면 그냥 가죠. 어디까지 쭉 가죠. 그건 이제 재즈에서 되게 많이 말하는 것 중에 하나인데, 컴핑할 때 그냥 코드만 계속 기계적으로 듣지 않고 C 마이너 F 그거 계속 부르는 거, 그걸 이제 오토파일럿이라고 보통 부르는.
My recommendation to you would be just listen and react rather than just react. You got to listen first at all times. I think what ends up happening is you could be listening more to what's happening that the soloist is doing, or particularly at the end, Will did an idea that kind of suggested a certain harmonic like way of navigating our way to end the tune. Ending tunes is always really difficult in general, but you sort of went in, you stayed in your zone and didn't sort of go with the rest of the band. But I noticed it during your comping as well. Even during the comping behind the drum solo, you were just comping as if it were, nothing, as if it was sort of like you were comping the way you practice comping, as opposed to listening to what was happening right then and there in the moment. So work on that, because I think that's one thing for me. I love to play off of ideas that the pianist plays, sort of thinking about yourself as counterpoint to what somebody else is doing. Okay.
네, 이제 컴핑할 때 더 중요한 게 듣는 거거든요. 먼저 듣고 그다음에 컴핑 먼저 코드를 들지 말고 항상 먼저 듣고 그다음에 반응을 해주라고 그렇게 말씀을 하시거든요. 그래서 제가 조금 더 하면은 이제 사람이 대화를 하는데 밥 먹었니? 물어보면은 거기에 대해서 대답을 하잖아요. 그게 아니고 지금은 밥 먹었니? 근데 그냥 똑같이 밥 먹었니? 그냥 행서주사하는 거랑 똑같아요. 그러니까 그거 이제 항상 듣는 연습하고 아까 보면은 곡이 끝날 때 미리 아이디어를 이제 엔딩 페이지 엔딩을 던져줬거든요. 이제 엔딩 간다는 이제 거기서 이제 뱀핑을 한다는 표시를 줬는데 계속 지금 체인지를 쳤었죠. 계속 앞으로 가서 이제 거기서 이제 잘 듣지 않다는 게 이제 듣지 않고 있다는 게 표시가 나죠. 그래서 항상 듣는 연습을 항상 딴 사람이 뭘 하고 있는지 듣는 연습을 했으면 좋겠다고 하십니다.
I would like to second what Alan said. I'm really so impressed to hear the way that we called a tune and then I just counted and we started playing and it felt great straight away. So congratulations. Because we don't have much time, I'd like to talk about one thing that maybe will apply to everybody instead of focusing on specifics, although I might talk about some specifics.
그래서 지금 개개인한테 말하는 것보다 이제 제네럴 그러니까 전체한테 말씀을 하신다고 합니다.
Alan was asking about what it is that makes a melody, which I thought was a great question because you could answer it in so many different ways.
아까 알란이 이제 멜로디에 대해서 말씀하셨는데 이제 멜로디를 이제 많은 웨이로 다양한 방법으로 연주할 수 있는데 이제
And it's very important that when we think about the things that are important to us in our playing, we need to think about them in ways, in different ways. So I want to give you one word that I want you to think about, all of you guys, when you're creating music together, when you're writing music, when you're improvising, whatever you're doing. And that word is contrast. Okay? The thing that separates, one of the things that separates just sound from music and art is contrast.
여러분이 이제 음악을 하실 때 곡을 쓰던 연주를 하던 뭘 하던 가장 중요한 이제 본인이 가장 중요하게 생각하는 단어 한 가지가 contrast, 명암이라는 단어거든요. 명암.
So I'm going to give you like 10 examples of how you can use contrast in music. Well, maybe not 10, I don't know, maybe 5, maybe 20. But so contrast between sound and space. Okay? All music must contain that contrast, because if it's just sound all the time, then it gets boring. If it's just space all the time, it gets even more boring. Oh, well, I don't know.
네, contrast, 명암 이제 사용하는 방법이 아주 많은데 그 중에 하나가 스페이스하고 타임, what is that? Space and
sound.
sound.
Right?
Yeah, space and sound.
Contrast between note values. So, whole notes all the way to, quarter note triplets, eighth notes, 16th notes, 32nd notes, etc.
이제 명암 콘트라스트 이제 관련된 중에 하나가 이제 노트 길이요. 이제 뭐 4분음표, 16분음표, 8분음표들이 있죠.
Contrast in timbre, contrast in the sound that you're making.
그냥 사운드, 여러분이 만드는 사운드죠.
Contrast in feel, particularly in a rhythm section. It seemed like within about 10 bars of this tune, you guys had decided what the feel was going to be, and then it stayed the same for the entire thing. It was just 4, walking in 4.
예, 이제 필 그 중에 하나가 필이었죠. 아까 보시면은 지금 여러 솔로 연주자가 했는데 리듬 섹션이 계속 4필이라고 그러죠. 계속 그랬죠. 차이 이제 없이.
And in relating to comping, this is something that's very important to think about. The contrast between what you're doing and what the soloist is doing. You want to be complementing them, but complementing them doesn't mean doing the same thing as them, right? It means offering a contrast against what they're doing.
네, 컴핑할 때 특히 솔로이스트가 했던 거를 그대로 쫓아하는 게 아니고 이제 거기에 맞는 이제 컨트라스트 명암이 있는 이제 대답을 해주는 거거든요. 그냥 그대 솔로 플레이가 땡뜨든 하면 같이 땡뜨든 이게 아니고 이제 거기에 맞는 다른 프레이즈를 이제 컴핑해 주는 거예요.
So I'm going to talk about comping just a little bit. I know Alan already did, but I'm just going to say a couple more things. Number one, comping is the hardest job in music. Okay?
가장 힘든 일이라고 합니다. 컴핑이.
If you're a piano player and you can comp in a way that other people like, then you will always work. You will always have gigs.
여러분 컴핑 잘하시면 돈 잘 벌 수 있습니다.
But it's really, really difficult. So, just a few things about what you're doing, and this relates to contrast as well. If somebody's playing a lot of stuff, that means you don't have to, right? You need to provide the basic level of intensity that moves with them. But if I'm playing, I don't need you to be going, right? Because I need the space to do what I'm doing. Similarly, but if I play, like if I get to the end of a phrase and I play one long note, then that's your opportunity to contrast what I'm doing with something that moves, right? Another thing is to do with range. If my solo is happening mostly like around that sort of range, that's where I don't want you to play. I want you to play down here, right? But if I'm here and you're here as well, then we're both there and there's no space, right? Yeah.
여러분 이해하셨죠 대충? 네, 그러니까 높은 음에서 솔로하고 있는데 굳이 높은 음에서 컴핑할 필요 없고 그 다음에 노트를 많이 치고 있는데 굳이 컴핑을 복잡한 리듬이나 많이 칠 필요 없고요. 반대되는 건 항상 컨트라스트라고 하죠. 명암.
So just think about that. Sometimes when you play music, you think, oh God, everything I'm playing is so boring, or everything I write, all the music I write sounds the same. When I feel that way, I just think to myself, is there any contrast in what I'm playing? And usually the answer is no. So that's just something I'd like you to think about, but I think I've said enough. But thank you.
본인이 쓴 곡이나 본인 연주 들으면은 아 왜 이렇게 구리지? 하고 생각하시는 분 많죠? 저도 그런데요. 네, 그럴 때는 항상 생각해서요. 컨트라스트. 교수님 올라오십니다.
저희 시간이 많이 갔지만 오늘 마지막 기회라고 생각하고 다른 팀 한 팀만 뭐 블루스도 괜찮고 라드벌드 스위트 괜찮고 빨리 마지막 기회입니다. 싹 나오세요. 피아노. 피아노 다 나와. 한 명씩 돌아가고.
안 하셨던 분들 올라오세요.
네, 한명 솔로 끝나면 뒤에 나와서 솔로 드럼 가시고요. 마지막 기회예요. 저희 이제 마지막 곡을 연주를 해야 될 것 같은데. 야드로드 스윗 싱어도 나오세요. 빨리 마지막 기회예요. 블루스 할게. F 블루스. They want to try. 블루스. F 블루스. 자, 지금 잘 들으셨죠? 커피에 대해서 들으셨죠? 자, 이번에는 여러분들이 오늘 들은 것들을 적용하는지 그게 가장 중요하다고 생각해요. 그냥 커피를 늘상 똑같이 하는 게 아니라 내가 알고 있는 코드지만 솔로하는 사람들한테 귀를 기울이면서 반응하는 연습을 했으면 좋겠어요. F 블루스 해도 될까요? 네.